Hey, it's Chris. Mighty Board sent me a copy, prototype-wise, of Rebirth, the next in the line of Knizia tile-laying style of games. In front of me, we have the Scotland map. I will be pulling out the Ireland map. I'll tell you a little bit of my thoughts on both of them. In the next line of the Blue Lagoons, Babylonias, Tigris and Euphrates, Samurais, and now Rebirth. How does it compare? Who is it right for? What do you need to know difference-wise with what's in front of us and what I've got to tell you? So let's go. So similar to one or two of those others that I just mentioned in the line of these tile laying games, this is going to be a game where you have a bunch of tokens here and you go until everybody has laid all of their tokens on the map. And so it's going to be a situation where you have three different types of tokens. You have your energies, you have your farms, you have your settlements to be splayed out in various locations on this map. Some of them only being able to go in certain locations, only energies in these ones, only farms in these ones, only settlements in these. But then you have blank spots where you can play either your farms or your energies. And so you're going to be trying to score the most victory points via the combination of these tiles as they start grouping together for points based on the size of the grouping, as well as objectives or secret objectives that are going along with it, again, depending on if you're playing Scotland or Ireland. Then you have settlement points that are going to be based on who's settled where, that are going to give you castles as well as cathedrals in other ways of scoring as you go around the places of this map. As you gain a little bit of area control, you get to place your cathedrals and your castles in the various locations. Again, ways of scoring at the end. Having them out matters. The basic gameplay, though, of this in a nutshell, of Rebirth, like many of these, is you're just taking one of these on a turn-by-turn basis from your draw pile, looking at it, and then, well, tactically choosing where you want it to go on the map. One of the main differences in Rebirth, as opposed to the other in these contemporaries, is that you get to place this anywhere that you want. There's no adjacency rules. You're going to want to have some adjacency because tile grouping size matters. The larger the size of connections of similar ones that are next to each other, the more points you get. 1 for 1, 2 for 2, 3 for 3. But it matters because if you put a farm token next to it, for example, they are not the same. No cumulative point scoring. And so that's the dynamic that you're going to have in this pre-populated board. You're going to have your settlement sizes, 1, 2, as well as 3 over here, but then you're also going to have, as the iconography is a little hard to tell from far away, castles, and then you're going to have, if I can find one here right in front of me, cathedrals that you're going to be placing spots next to as well. And both of those are going to matter for more of the end game situations. Castles, well, you are an area control situation, and if you have the most tiles of your color touching this, then you control it. You have one of your castles out there. Castles are worth 5 points at the end, so not insignificant as this board starts to populate. Then you have your cathedrals, and you place one of these on the cathedral to mark that you have, played one next to the cathedral in the first place, because that's where these secret objective cards come in. And you're going to be drawing these up, trying to get them through all sorts of various ways, forms, and shapes. Some of these are going to be additional locations, having the most around certain castles or certain cathedrals in the first place. Some of these are just going to be straight up cathedral bonus points. Some of them may also be just having the most ports or the most types of settlements of size, 1, 2, or 3. And so all of those are going to give you, well, significant amount of victory points as you're slowly gathering. And that is where the main crux of this game lies in a little bit of a different manner, is that this board is completely open. You can play anywhere on a turn-by-turn basis whatsoever. And so that's the player count dynamic that we have to talk about. In a 2-player game, if you're familiar with Babylonia, for example, in a 2-player game, they start sectioning off the map so you only play with a third of it or 2/3 of it, depending on your player count, because it makes it a lot tighter. It makes it so there is less options overall, more dynamics of the interplay, and potentially the take that. This is just literally, you can play anywhere on this board, any space that matches whatever token you have drawn in front of you at that time. Like I said, you're doing these by grouping. So I place that down there. I have 2 farms next to each other. I get 2 points. The settlements, though, are a little bit different. We have to talk about those. Settlements of size 1, settlements of size 3, and settlements of size 2. Now, ones, obviously, once you put 1 in there, you win that settlement. You score points based on the number of houses. However, then you can imagine that the other 2 and 3 level settlements are not going to always be somebody has all of the spaces occupying them. And so when you start placing them in multiple, then the ranked scoring, as you're used to in a lot of other games, happens, where first place gets so many points, second place gets so many points. There you go. Third place, etc. And so then, if you obviously have both in this, you're going to just get more than actually just first. It's not one of those games where first is the worst and second is the best. It's going to be one of those games where, you know, having both reds in there actually gets me more than just the normal first place points. It's actually the sum total, I think, most of the time in terms of the points that you're getting. So again, the dynamic's a little bit different. And again, the castles are out there, the cathedrals are out there. It's just everywhere across the board. And so you're going to be slowly reacting, a la your Babylonias and your Blue Lagoons, to where other people's combos, chains, and presence is in the first place in order to, well, outdo your opponent. Your ports also are a way you can score, and the Ireland board gives you a whole different dynamic that we'll talk about in a second. But that otherwise is the game in the nutshell, right? You just go until every single one of these is out on the board. You've used all of yours up. And again, the main difference there, again, being the player counts, is how many of these are at your disposal as you're going through the game. So more people, less of them overall. Makes sense. The Ireland board does 2 things mainly differently that you need to know. And it makes it so that I actually prefer the Ireland board in a nutshell. This is going to be very straightforward. This is going to be very vanilla for a lot of people that are looking at this. This Scotland board is very light. This is a perfect intro game to this style of tile laying in the first place, because you're going to have the dynamics, you're going to have the groupings, you're going to have a little bit of objectives, but not overwhelmingly. Where Ireland twists it up, if you will, Ireland will have 8 of these 12 cards that are going to be sitting out in front of you, and these are group objective cards. These objective cards will have a first place and a second place for every single one. For example, in these, you're seeing 8 and 5 and 12 and 5. And so only if you're first or second do you actually get the victory points here. The other aspect and dynamic that's changed here is you have these little tower locations on the board as well. And they give you bonuses the first time you build next to one of them. And you place them down on some of the named locations. And anytime you build for the first time next to it, you get that bonus, whatever it may be. And so you have them hidden, you have them splayed up, and you get to see exactly what bonus you're going to get and how it's going to play into your effects. But what I really like about the Ireland board, because this is the big criticism of this game, I would say, in a whole, is that unlike a lot of the other ones that I mentioned, your Yellow and Yangtzes, your Blue Lagoons, your Babylonias, right? You have a little bit of set, but you have a lot of variability about what is where, right? When you look at this board, Malag is always going to be here. Stirling is always going to be here. Dundee is always going to be here. These groupings of pairings of farms and cathedrals and castles and, solar energy places are always going to be the same. So if you play this map enough, you're going to start to know, okay, this is where I need to go in order to get the best energy route as a whole. This is going to give me the best groupings of farms over here that I can connect and continue and snake. And so there's going to be a little bit more of a meta potential involvement there if you're playing this repeatedly. Whereas the objective cards here on the Ireland side of things are going to mix it up. These tiles are going to give it more variety on a game-by-game basis. And that's what I love about the Knizia tile layers in the first place, is the rules are this thick, but the depth comes from the play of the game. And so in that sense, Scotland has it, but Ireland has it more in spades, or potatoes, maybe I should say. Right? But where I'm also going with that is you have 8 of these objective cards that are face up. There's also one special spot on the board on the Ireland map that causes you to actually then reveal one of the 4 extra reserve ones, because 8 are face up, 4 are face down. And so when you're going to timingly go next to that one to draw one, and that's maybe the small mitigation there that you may or may not like, you just draw one. But if you get it too late in the game, how well or how beneficial is it going to be, especially if you still have to achieve it and it doesn't suit your fancy, right? Like, you know, Ticket to Ride. You pull one of those cards where you've already got the requirements met versus you pull one of those cards where it's two locations that you're not anywhere near of. And so pulling this early is going to behoove you, but it may also change your strategy with the ones that are out. So timing wise and adaptability and variability is much higher in Ireland because of that. Weight wise though, let's talk about the weight wise of these games. This game is probably weight-wise similar to Blue Lagoon. I can teach it to my 8 or my 10-year-old. They're going to understand the premise. It's going to be easy flowing. It's going to be an hour or less, realistically, just by the nature of laying them out and going until you're done. There is less analysis paralysis because of the pre-placed positionings on the map in the first place. And that might behoove you if you're looking for something that's a little bit just easier to get played in that way. If your group is more dynamically concerned about it from that aspect of things. But overall, it's going to be much lighter than any of these in the other line or style. And I don't say that as a bad thing. I say that as accessibility. If accessibility matters, I mean, I love Yellow and Yangtze. I love Tigris and Euphrates. I'm not teaching that to everybody that I play with. And so that is the big problem. I love Blue Lagoon because it's lighter. I taught my oldest child when he was 8 how to play Blue Lagoon, and then he almost beat me. But Babylonia is sort of a middling. It's got the great tactical depth that I love. It's a slight step up overall, and it doesn't outstay its welcome. This meets two of those three, right? It is not outstaying its welcome. It's very adaptable in terms of the players that can actually play it, but it's not going to be as cognitively impairing or cognitive overload if you're looking at this and going, what do I do? You have one tile, and blessing or curse, you're tactically choosing where is the most strategic point for me to put this, and this one alone. The other great part about this game is it still gives you that dynamic that you're looking for in the tile layers like this in the first place, right? Because the points are basically based off of consolidating your presence. Well, consolidating your presence is going to come at a cost of these castles, because these castles, you know, dynamically, balance-wise, are worth as much points as most of the secret objectives. And until you start getting groupings of, well, 5 or more, because that's how much the castles are worth, castles are going to be much more valuable. And there are a lot of castles on this board all over the place. And so you're min-maxing that tight decision space that you may want in the first place as you adapt to what other people are doing on the board in front of you. The one tile dilemma will give you ways of figuring out your best move on a turn-by-turn basis. Depending on how take that or cutthroat your group is, though, you can play a little bit that way, but this game doesn't necessarily reward it as much as, say, something like Babylonia, because it's going to maybe take that against your opponent, but you will definitely have, I feel like, in the games that we played, lose out more on your own side rather than you're going to gain from someone else's demise, if that makes sense. So it's not as pure cutthroat in that way. The board fills up. You try and steal castles. You're managing when you're going to get your objectives in order to meet them, because also cathedral placement is less potentially point worthy in a lot of these places on the board in order to then engage your dynamic of when and timing and order. So it achieves its goal on that side of things. And to be frank, again, the Ireland board is just going to give you more. The big concern when I played Scotland was I said, okay, I could see the meta evolving. I could see us trying to go more in certain areas, tendencies, right? And so if you have that group, the Ireland board is going to be more of a must, with the variable setup, the variable objectives, more information at the beginning so that it's not just hidden. Because again, with the deck of ones that are, well, this one for Scotland, you just might get something Ticket to Ride, like I mentioned, where it just doesn't work with your strategy when you go there mid-game or 3/4 of the way through. And so then it becomes more of a gamble. Then it becomes more of a high risk, high reward sort of thing, a less mitigatable, a less control. And so if you're looking for that, especially with a lot of these tile layers that you may be looking for in the first place of why you like this genre dynamic or mechanistic approach, Ireland is going to give it to you much more suitably. So do I like it? Yeah, I mean, this is my type of game, period. Scotland for me and the kids and the wife, Ireland for me and the game group. I like it from that aspect of things. Again, I wouldn't mind even another board to go along with it in the future. I mean, that's what I feel like this could easily adapt to. You could have one other tweak or two in terms of places, placements, objectives, things like that to go along with it. Or even just some modularity. You know, this is a big freaking honking board of, 6 pieces. Mixing and matching. You know, if all of these were individually, Spirit Island-esque, that would be another really cool feature. And I almost wish it was like that. But then obviously the real world shape of the landmass would be different. But that's where I could see this going and why I would like it as well. So the end of the game, I mean, you end up with castles smattered all over, cathedrals, secret objectives, tiles, add zooks. But I think you're going to get your money's worth with most of these games at a little bit of a higher player count. They're very nice at 2, but the dynamics you're going for, as always, are going to be best at 3 and 4. Who's not going to like this game? Well, again, this is going to be too light. If you're looking for something of his ilk, of these tile layers, where the dynamics of the long-term strategy, the go-like experience of yellow, Yangtze, samurai, whatever you want to call it, it's not going to be there because you have one tile every single time. One tile, one tile, one tile. And then again, at the higher player counts, as you may realize, it's going to go around. And so optimal spots are going to be taken before it comes back around to you, and you're not going to have any way of mitigating that potentially as well. So that might not behoove you. Again, drawing from the deck is going to be random with a lot of these cards. If you just don't get the one you need, it's, again, to use that comparison, that's the best one I got, stick it to ride. Sometimes you get the one you absolutely meet and need, and other times, well, you can't risk it, and you're better off trying to ensnare this castle that's in your way that your opponent's already got of, that you can snatch out from under them at the very end of the game. Yeah, that's it, though. Rebirth, very happy with it. Where does it rank? I mean, again, I would say my first love is still probably Babylonia. Blue Lagoon, though, in terms of depth, as well as, weight and accessibility. And it's just going to be easier to get to the table than, say, my opposite end of the spectrum, Samurais, Tigresses, and Yellows. So does it fit in differently? Yes. If you have some of the others, is this going to overlap significantly? No, because I think it's an amalgam, a combination of a few of those dynamically different. So is it going to be drastically different enough if you love those and you're saying, is this one going to blow me out of the water as something completely different in the genre? No, either. But again, that's okay. Sometimes the most comfortable thing is the comfy blanket that you're already familiar with, that you're liking in the first place. And that's what this brings to the table as well. So there you go. Rebirth. Mighty Board sent me the prototype to talk about. So, as always, thanks for watching. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Subscribe if you made it this far. That's all I got. No end ramble. No end rant. Nothing funny here at the end. I was trying to think of something. I don't have anything tonight. Peace out.